Hi everybody and welcome back to this week's edition of B2BNAV. This is a bit of a special edition this week and we're going to be touching on the very topical subject of mental health. So for those that are unaware, this week is Mental Health Awareness Week and the theme, if you can call it that, behind it is kindness. So I guess I also like to give a bit of background and context of why we picked this as a subject. You'll look at more faces than normal on this week's podcast. So we've got the classics, as I'll call them now, John and Ollie. We're joined by Sam, who you've met before, and Sophie, who's one of the other team members here at BDB. So it's something that we've been trying to embrace more as an employer, understand better, and provide more support services and context for our team members. And we can come on to some of the things, specific things we've been doing of late. But I guess, to put it out there straight off the bat, Mental Health Awareness Week, what does it mean to everybody? Does it mean anything? Does it have any impact on you? Go. And I'm going to go like that this week and just go for chaos.
It brings awareness to it, doesn't it? Which I think is always a positive point. Me personally, I don't really think it has a big impact. But I think it's nice for those that do suffer with it. Do you think it loses any of its impact because every week is a week of something at the moment? That's the way it feels to me, and I think that's the impact of social media as well that's kind of come into the mix. But you know, there's a day or a week or a something all the time. Does it lose its impetus by falling in with that? Do you think?
I don't know if it loses its impetus, but I think what's interesting is, given that we're all in lockdown, I think it's much more prevalent. I think people are a lot more aware of it. I mean, obviously the moves that we've made at BDB, having kind of really focusing on it, but it kind of does feel that everyone's a little bit more conscious of it, shall I say, and kind of views it a bit more charitably.
I think that seems to be the starting point for it more than anything, doesn't it? In terms of making it more acceptable just to speak about it, and that's kind of some of the sessions that we've covered in the training that we've done. I mean, Sam, for somebody like yourself, when you're relatively new to a team and obviously from a different generation that I'm incredibly jealous of. But for you, if your employer, so BDB says, right, we're going to do mental health awareness kind of sessions and coaching on a Monday morning for an hour or whatever, do you think, great? Be honest, by the way, do you think, oh, great, that's really supportive? Or do you think, oh, Christ, what on earth are we discussing here? Or what's your personal take on it?
I think at first, you don't really know what you're getting yourself into. So I sort of thought, we'll do it. And I didn't really expect much from it. And I think, so these sort of hour-long sessions we've been doing, first coming into it, it was really bizarre because you're there with work colleagues, so people that you almost feel like you shouldn't speak about this stuff with. And you're there and, people are engaging with the chat. It's not just a lecture or a seminar on mental health. It's a back and forth conversation between the whole team and the people from Safe Space. But I think it was almost nice to break that barrier down, and then for people to be able to talk about it, feel a bit more free to talk about it. And you saw after the initial awkwardness barrier that people started to support each other and communicate about it. So I guess it breaks that stigma, which is quite nice.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the main points, I guess. I'll flip to you, Ollie, but in the sense of, obviously you've been with BDB a lot longer, but the sessions we've been doing kind of kicked off around health is health, wasn't it? In the sense of more your physical health and your mental health arguably are one and the same, and everybody has both. How have you found the sessions so far as a more experienced team member? Do you think they've been a benefit, a value, or?
I think it's been, from what I've seen of everybody else, I think people overall are finding it really beneficial. I think, echoing Sam's point, seeing the way everybody's engaging in the chat during the session just shows people are taking it seriously, shows people are willing to say, hey, I'm struggling at the minute, or I'm okay, but I'm not amazing at the minute. I think that's really great to see people willing to engage from that point of view. Having this session helps you realize it's not a case of I'm fine or I'm not fine. Spectrum in between, and everybody's got mental health, and depending on your current mood and the day and where it is, some days I might feel a little bit anxious, other days I'm absolutely fine, but obviously I wouldn't categorize myself as somebody that needs serious support. So it's great having that support and like along the way and seeing that everybody else is kind of in the same situation.
Do you think, and this is an open question to anybody who's brave enough to tackle it, I'll put these questions out there because as an employer, this whole mental health space is relatively new. And everybody's discussing it, and it's prevalent, and it's at the forefront of everybody's mind all the time. And I think we've had some feedback from the sessions, and I would include myself in this feedback, that you go to the session feeling good. If you look for the week, it's a Monday morning, you feel fresh, you're ready to go maybe, with lots of things on your list. And then you go through an hour-long session talking about anxiety and feeling, how you feel, whether you feel up, down, and so on and so on. And I've left the session personally a couple of times questioning, am I okay? When I've started the week feeling absolutely fine. And I don't really know how to convey that. I guess it's an honest observation, I guess, that by discussing mental health so much all the time, which I understand the purpose of, to get it on the agenda and to make it acceptable to speak about, and I'll stop giving that caveat all the time, but are we encouraging it too much? Are we at risk of that at the minute, do you think, in the world as an employer?
I suppose it depends. Go on, Ollie.
You'd liken it to, potentially, along that analogy, having a kind of a scratch on your arm and you kind of get on with your life and ignore it. But if you start talking about that scratch on your arm a lot, you're going to realise it hurts a lot more than you realised.
But should you realise, is that a good or a bad thing that you realise that? That's what it means.
I think it's good. I mean, personally, I would like to think that my mental health is, robust and I feel reasonably okay about myself all the time. But what it does and has made me do is be more conscious of other people. Mm-hmm. And I think there's an irony of the fact that we've not seen each other for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Yet I think through these sessions and through actually facing it, and in some ways I do think it's facing it, because it is one of those sort of ailments that people brush under the carpet because it's too complicated or difficult to deal with. Mm-hmm. It helps you, or it certainly helps me personally, gauge how people are feeling, gauge how to respond to them, how much to kind of lift their workload, how much to give them to focus on work to kind of keep them kind of occupied.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest revelation, and it's one of those common sense things, is actually mental health and physical health are completely different, but exactly the same. Yeah. And I think you've mentioned it before about potentially changing the way we phrase days that people have off,
sick days,
rather a health day than a sick day, and kind of being much more positive and more focused and not making people feel guilty for feeling low or anxious.
On that, because this is I mean, because I've suggested these initiatives. I think we should change it. I think sick days are relatively strange term anyway these days, but in the sense of, so that kind of things we are looking to change and adapt as a business. The concern as an employer, and I've got to say it, otherwise we're not being honest, is by saying to somebody, you can wake up one day and think, today is not my day. And I know other agencies that are calling it, today's not my day. That's the day, that as a sick day, let's call it, but for mental health reasons.
That's duvet day, isn't it, by all intents and purposes?
Well, I think it is, but are you not encouraging people to lose that? The difference between mental health and resilience, and I know they're linked, obviously, but there's days when I wake up and you're having a bad day and you're having you've had a crap weekend, you've not enjoyed yourself, and you're dreading the week ahead because you're packed full of meetings and you think, oh my God, this is going to be a tough week. And I'm going to say it, but you have to put your big boy pants on and get up out of bed and you have to go to work. Yeah. I would say that's resilience.
I don't think people understand the difference between having a bad day and depression. I think that's the biggest problem.
That's what I was leading to, which is good. Yeah, okay.
As someone who has suffered with depression in the past, don't have it now, but I have bad days, and I don't sit there and think, oh God, I'm depressed, because I know what depression feels like.
Yeah.
And there's a big, big difference between the two. But I think people that maybe suffer with having a lot of bad days, but not depression, don't know the difference between the two.
Well, I don't think I do. I don't think I do. That's what I'm trying to say, I guess, in a way. I think as a business leader, you've got to appreciate you don't understand that. Do you think so? Like, I don't understand. And I think unless you've suffered with it, you can't understand.
No, you can't. It's a really hard thing to empathise with. But I think speaking about it more, being more aware of it,
yeah,
I hope would help people understand when they are having a bad day or are, are truly depressed or have got a real issue that they need to attend to.
And what do you think on that? What do you think on that, Sam? Because I guess on that point, I always come to you and start calling your generation. But in the sense of, you're all known as snowflakes, flaky little things who panic and can't have no resilience. So that's probably, one of the main words that gets bandied around about, the Gen Zers in a way of, there's a real lack of resilience amongst you. Not saying I agree with that, but in the sense of, do you see that? You wake up and have a bad day and think, if I said, oh, don't worry, you can just ring up and say, today's not my day. And that's cool. That's perfectly acceptable to do that. Does that encourage your generation to, putting it bluntly, take the piss?
I think potentially.
That's a soft apple this week, isn't it?
I think there's the potential there that people could abuse that system. And I think people would have, if they were to abuse the system, they'd do it knowingly and say, oh, I don't feel great today, I can't be bothered with work. I think it's difficult to judge and to talk about because everyone deals with mental health differently and everyone balances it differently. Where, as Sophie was saying, some people have, depression for weeks, some people have on and off days, and some people just have a bad day. And I think it's important to, try and keep your head up and go to work. I think you need going to work to be an environment that you can go to also, if you are having a bad day, it's important to be able to go to work and have a bad day, but still be able to do your job and, yeah, exactly. So I think you need to create a space at work and a sort of team mentality where if you're having a bad day, you can talk about it for 5 minutes and then you can do your work and you're not feeling the weight of that, that bad day.
I think that's really relevant because I think that's one of the pieces of advice that I got all the way through my career coming up through the ranks was leave your personal problems at the door. And it's just such a change and such a switch these days.
That's generational though, isn't it?
Yeah, but it was. I mean, you must have heard that over the years, John, in the sense of work's work, leave your problems at the door, you come to work and you deliver your work. Yeah. Whereas now it's like, you bring all your baggage with you. And this is honestly how it feels as an employee. Bring it with you and that's totally acceptable. And we'll spend as much time as you need embracing that and talking through that. And almost, as an employee, you feel almost like a counsellor.
Yeah.
And I am not qualified to be a counsellor.
But don't you think there's an opportunity there? And I suppose you're right. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because you've got to go through that pain of allowing people the ability to kind of acknowledge it's a not for me day or whatever. But then as an employer, you can kind of then identify where people have got real problems that perhaps were being hidden or covered and could be, could get to a catastrophic or terminal point of view.
Yeah.
Whereas actually you can then kind of guide them because a hypothetical thing might be, okay, someone's feeling low, someone's feeling depressed, they're not performing. The immediate instinctive reaction is to go, right, this is all going horribly wrong. Do we put that person on a PIP? Do we put them through some sort of disciplinary process? But actually, if you've then had that preamble of, okay, there's been a few days there where they've just not been feeling it and they've not come in and we're opening up, we've talked about it, we can actually now address it and adapt. Yeah, and I'm not saying bend round to change someone's role completely, but you can adapt it to kind of help them through that and get the most out of them productivity wise.
How comfortable do people feel here within the group, or how comfortable do you think people are speaking openly about the way they feel, particularly around mental health? And I don't mean just at BDB here, but generally, because I guess to give context to the question, there's an awful lot of expense that comes with this. So in the sense of, as an employer, again, with my employer's hat on, and that's the one I'm going to keep on today, somebody doesn't want to speak to you as an owner manager, they want a HR contact. But the HR contact is somebody they work with, but they don't want to speak to that HR contact. Then they want now an external mental health support type line. So, through our benefit system, we have a line they can ring, but these are anonymous people. Nobody's ever used it to my knowledge in work. I don't know if that's, that might not be 100% correct, but so that now we've engaged with external trainers, which is another expense to the business. And if that expense is offset by people taking more days off because it's acceptable to take days off, where does that kind of stop, I guess, is the question.
I think there's a balance though between if someone is if we compare it to physical health again, if someone's playing a sport and they're running with an injury and they don't tell people, they're sort of efficiency and productivity is going to be worse than it was, and people are going to be questioning that and saying, well, why aren't they performing? And I think it's the same with mental health. If you're struggling with something, I guess it does become expensive, but you then have that ability to deal with that and make sure that someone's not spending, a month working at half capacity because they're just like, they just can't get through the day and they're really struggling. But yeah, I think there is a balance of investing money to give that sort of space for them to talk about their problems and things like that. But it must be difficult as an employer because, as you were saying, you're not qualified to deliver that counselling or know what to ask people, or, get them to ask to others. So I think people need to balance it in and out of work as well.
Yeah, and I think is from the employer perspective, again, you're desperate to support your team, like genuinely want to support the team and give them the best advice and support network you can and make it an open and free an environment. But it is a minefield trying to get it right and trying to kind of pick your way through it, I guess.
One point I'd say, speaking for ourselves at least, is that, and I know there's many examples of this, I think it's just best to treat people like responsible adults that we are. And I know there's always going to be exceptions to this, and I think that's kind of where we jump when we start thinking about this. Not using Sam as an example, but I think if you just start about like 18, 19-year-old that's, recently joined a company, and you start thinking about things like this, and you start thinking like, well, what's to stop them just saying Monday morning hungover, can't be bothered doing it? But
you can spot trends like that, can't you?
Yeah,
you can eventually, can't you? But I think that's one of the. I get what you're saying, but I think what treat people like adults, like human beings, responsibly, and all that kind of thing, it is cool when you're a business of a certain size. I would, in the sense of we're sub 50 people, therefore we can pretty tightly not control but monitor everybody of 50 people. When you've got 50,000 employees, how do you still have that level of kind of trust, autonomy?
But is that where that kind of repositioning mental health away from it being something that's not real to a physical illness, you then judge it in the same way, don't you? So I know, for example, when we look back on a year, we'll look at sick days, as we're still calling them sick days, and you'll see trends in them and you'll identify, right, that person is definitely not well because of the pattern, or that person appears to be very ill on Fridays quite a lot.
Friday morning, is that me?
Why? So then you start to play it back through and go, okay, and then you might do whatever you might do in terms of intel through Facebook, through social media, and you go, oh, you're out every Thursday night, and yet you're being taking a sick day on Friday. That's not acceptable.
Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say, add to that really, is that we already do trust people with sick days. Really.
Yeah. So what's the difference with mental health? I think is the key thing there.
And we're not asking people to the best of my knowledge, bring in doctor's notes, or maybe we do if it's a certain length of time. And a probably bigger one is we already trust people with unlimited holidays.
Yeah.
Which is something that I think, again, if you look at it on paper, that you think would be massively abusable, but as far as I've seen, it's not really been abused by anybody so far. And I'm sure there might be some exceptions.
No, and that's honestly why you feel relatively comfortable as BDB's leadership of kind of introducing health days and calling it health days, because I think we have got the team and the culture of people that won't ultimately take advantage of it. And take advantage is the wrong word. I'm trying not to say the swear word again. But
and correct me on that unlimited holidays point though. Didn't that idea come from Netflix, which is obviously a huge company, huge volume that can't necessarily manage people?
Well, it's a huge company, but it's not necessarily a huge amount of employees.
It's just all based around the freedom and autonomy, freedom and responsibility, freedom, autonomy. So in the sense of, I get the freedom and responsibility point is more around giving people the freedom and autonomy that they crave, but asking them to do things responsibly. And you can pick up, and if you're not acting responsibly, you'll be picked up on it. And that's what we've always said. So yes, it is unlimited holidays, but if you take 300 days off in the year, we're probably going to have a word with you about it.
But it's a quid pro quo, isn't it? That flexibility and that trust.
Yeah.
I remember when you looked at adapting the expenses policy from a, shall we say, fairly draconian set of rules to act in the best interest of BDB, the abuse suddenly goes out of the window because people are thinking about it in a positive way rather than a negative way.
Yeah. And I think that's all you can do as the employer around mental health. I mean, were you self-employed when you were struggling, Soph?
Yes. Yeah, I worked at home on my own.
That must have been even more isolating, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in terms of that difference between, and you don't have to open up like this because I'm probably putting you on the spot too much, but in the sense of that difference between resilience, as you say, like having a bad day and knowing you just need to get up and get on with it, and then true depression. Because I think that is the biggest disconnect for anybody that's not suffered with it. Because you do just think, well, let's get out of bed and get on with it. Like, what's wrong with you? Can you try and describe that? Or is it impossible to? And you don't have to, by the way. But
depression, how it feels?
Yeah.
God. I mean, there was days where I got in the shower and I would sit on the floor crying because I couldn't physically get up and go and get ready.
Right.
The prospects of leaving the house made me have a panic attack. I would have like a tight feeling in my chest. There was days where I couldn't shower, physically couldn't do it, physically couldn't get out of bed. I was so tired, so lethargic.
Is that more anxiety based for yourself?
It was a bit of both. It was both.
Okay.
Yeah. It's very different to having a bad day. Having a bad day is one day. Mm-hmm. Depression is weeks and months on end.
Cumulative effect of things building.
Yeah.
I also guess for the mental health, physical health side, the comparison's the same, really, isn't it? I guess just breaking it down, thinking about it on the spot here, in the sense of you get some people who'll take a day off because they've got a cough. As I'll put it for the meantime.
Well, now that's probably
oh, that's me. I'm off tomorrow.
I'm
coughing, and you get other people who come into work probably when they definitely shouldn't be in work, who are absolutely dying on the feet, which equally isn't encourageable either. But I suppose that's just the two ends of the spectrum of the resilience argument, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's also old. So, like, the old mentality was you have to be in the office to work. Yeah. Therefore, you did get that huge extreme, didn't you, of someone's got a cough, they're not in the office.
But do you not think that also comes into paid sick days? In the sense that paid sick days are a lot more common these days, I would say, unless you work in maybe manufacturing or some kind of factory environment. But most people get paid, so it's damn sight easy to go, I'm taking tomorrow off because I know I'll get it paid.
But then I think the quid pro quo with the trust and the kind of faith that the business shows in the employees is that's a lot rarer. Mm-hmm. And you find people who are, whether they're dying on the feet, that might be a bit extreme, if they've got no reason to be in work, but will work from home because we've enabled it. And then they know that the quid pro quo is, well, I can take a few days off here or there. And, I can have an extra day off back there and kind of add it to my weekend or whatever. And it kind of works well because you maintain the productivity and people are more likely to kind of feel engendered to do that.
I think one of the big differences about us, I don't know if this really applies to every other company, but I think everybody's got a lot of personal responsibility in terms of their workload, things that they need to get done. So I think from that point of view, people know that the only people that are cheating, if they were to exploit a system themselves, really, because they'll have to catch up in some.
I think that's really interesting what you're saying there, Ollie, about personal responsibility, because that's different to a massive workload. That's actually owning it and being kind of feeling that you are not on the hook, but you are in control of that pocket of work is different to, I don't know, just having like an endless stream of work being thrown on you with no kind of responsibility for it.
Yeah. And that's not to say that when people need help, they don't get help. So I've been sat at home with a fever and that work still needs to get done. So you obviously have to offload it to somebody else, but it's my responsibility to make sure I know that's being picked up by somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I guess from an employer perspective, because assuming there's some employers listening to this and certainly employees from other walks of life, what else could we be doing as an employer, do you think, to make it more acceptable to discuss mental health? Have you seen anything at other places, other companies, other examples that you think, they're getting it right, or anything like that?
I think it's just important to be able to come into the office and have the culture of not being scrutinized. If you are just having a bad day, being able to come in and say to someone, I'm not feeling it today, and they might say, let's grab a coffee, and then you have that culture of, I guess, just having genuine people. And it stems down from leadership, that if you come into the office with a positive attitude that reflects on others, and you can sort of hope that you can make a difference with that person, where maybe they're having a bad day and they're excited to come into the office because I'm struggling with things at home, and go into the office and get my head down, and so I think for me it's all about office atmosphere and the sort of atmosphere you get there of, can you talk openly, or do you have to just sit and deal with your own problems on your own and let them build and snowball?
Yeah. Okay.
I think the good thing about safe space as well, though, is it's actually giving people coping mechanisms to if they've got anxiety, to try and deal with that, or depression, to try and deal with it, which I think is important. I don't think that's kind of taught to people as kids as they're growing up. I think it's becoming more and more prevalent in younger generations, depression and anxiety, and I don't think they're taught how to deal with it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The real positive points out the safe space sessions that we've had, and in no way are we sponsored by them, by the way, but I think they've been worthwhile so far. Some more than others, some more, and that might be a personal thing, maybe of where you're at yourself. But I think that because they have the true external experts on the call as well, it has more gravitas with me than it just being like a business coach or somebody who clearly has never had depression. And even if somebody has had it, but they're not, somebody who is a specialist in that area. And the fact they've flexed in different specialists every week, depending on the topic that we're kind of covering. For me, that's been really interesting to hear, like, a person who suffered with it, but then also the I don't know, the science behind it, maybe, or however you want.
I think that's important, isn't it? That connection of making it not just, because it isn't necessarily just mental health, it's physiological, it's kind of, everything's kind of interconnected.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a real eye opener for me personally, in terms of, getting away from that, just deal with it, pack up your troubles and leave them at the door and get on with it, to more of.
Sorry, go on, Ollie.
I'll touch on that point with the packing up and the troubles, because I think it comes back to a point we were talking about earlier in the podcast about a younger generation's less resilient than older generations. I think what we have to remember with that is the massive technological shift that's happened in the last, particularly 20 years or so, in terms of the fact that, if you went back to the 70s, I'm pretty sure if you left your office, that was it for the night.
Yeah.
But now we're constantly surrounded by phones, constantly surrounded by emails. We can work from home, we can work from the office, we can work from the pub, wherever it is we might be, which means that we're basically always on. And I'd say that kind of works both ways, always on home life and always on work life. Like, if you've got a problem currently happening at home, whether that's an argument with your partner, a problem with family, whatever it might be, that's going to be intruding in your work life, because you're going to be getting messages throughout the day, and vice versa.
And while we're on that, because there's 2 more points before we wrap up, I think we've definitely touched on it before in previous podcasts, but the impact of social media. So as well as being always on, which I totally agree with, being always connected, I love it. Maybe I'm weird, but I personally love always being connected, because you don't like being cut off from the business. But the flip side of that being the social media aspect of things, and this aspirational false reality it creates for people who have had a really tough day and they get home at 6 o'clock. Then they've got to put the kids to bed, do homework. And then at 8 o'clock, you go online and you see people on yachts, supercars, supermodels, looking great, tanned, holidaying all the time, taking 4,000 photos to get that one shot that they use. Is that contributing to this? Or do we think that's just another factor?
I think it must be. I mean, I've got an 11-year-old daughter, and I know it affects her. She's 11. And I tightly monitor what she can and can't get hold of on the internet. But she's fully aware of the Kardashians, of all this kind of rich kids of Instagram stuff, Real Housewives of Cheshire, all that kind of jazz. And you do see, even at their age, you see them making comparisons. And I think that's really hard, because suddenly you're going, well, my life's not that great, I'm just doing this. And actually, I remember when I started, and this, in the infancy of the internet, and to this day, it's like, oh, well, actually, I'm working in advertising. This is the best job anyone could have ever given me. This is amazing. Yeah. But now people always want that little bit more, or go think, well, they're doing that. Why can't I do that? And how do I do that? And never actually focusing on the moment of, well, actually, what you're doing is really good. You've got a great job, a great career, a great team. Don't kind of chase false dreams.
Yeah. And what do you think on that, Soph?
I think when you're feeling down, or if you're depressed, I think you tend to forget that it's a false reality. Instagram and Facebook is not real. And I think when you're down and you kind of thinking, woe is me, because you do, as someone that's been through it, that is the reality, that you look at people that are having fun and think, why can't that be me? And you forget that, like you say, you take 10,000 photographs to get that one good one.
Or there's 30 people in front of them kind of
and
Yeah.
But then I think
it
struck home for me more than anything when we went to Santorini last year. And they had some kind of a poster. It was the most Instagram spot in the world or something. Whether that's true or not, I've no idea. But near where the hotel we were staying, and it was beautiful. Like it was, but you struggle to take a bad photo. It looked so good. But then in the sense of all the number of people that were there, purely Instagramming, and I watched girls painstakingly take, and it must have been thousands. I'm not exaggerating either. Bursts of photos for about an hour. Correcting it, tweaking hair, doing this, and I thought, Christ almighty, you can't take a bad photo. You know, like you couldn't. It was beautiful, it was stunning. But it's not.
Sorry, go on, Matt.
No. I was just going to say, in terms of to Sam, I was going to flip it to you because I guess the younger Gen Zers of the world who are, you know, social media savvy. Does that impact on you as well in the sense of, you know, are you reading quotes on Instagram and looking at supercars and thinking, hey, that's where I want to be, or, you know, I don't know what.
I think for me, it's very important that you look internally rather than externally for comparisons. Cause I think people spend a lot of time comparing themselves to others, and, you know, you can sit in and take a photo of someone with everything you want and go, oh wow, I wish I had their life. Mm-hmm. In reality, they have down days. You know, there's things that they've done that you wouldn't have wanted to do, and I think it's more important to look at yourself and think, well, you know, if I am unhappy, how can I deal with this? Is it that, you know, my career is not right for me? Is it that I need to get out and enjoy, you know, wildlife more, or this, or whatever makes you happy? But I think the issue is that it's much easier to pick up your phone, go on Instagram and say, oh Christ, like I want everything that's here and I'm not getting any of it, than to sit down and take the time to be introspective. Mm-hmm. So I think it definitely impacts people. I know loads of people my age that, you know, are looking at something and saying, why can't I look like that? And you have to say to them, look, it's been photoshopped twice. It's, you know, had this applied to it. It's had this applied to it. You can't look like that. It's impossible.
That's the changed nature, isn't it, of escapism? Because, like, I guess when I was a kid, and probably Matt as well, and Ollie to a degree, is like escapism for me was going to the cinema, was watching a film, was doing something like that was completely disconnected from any of my day to day. Escapism for, I guess, people of your generation, Sam, is going on that, and you're looking at other people doing stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and it's too comparative. Whereas for us, it was kind of like a film. You know, well, that's just switch off. Real world gone. It's.
I think one of the most powerful things I heard, and I can't recall who said it, or maybe several people have said it, and that's why it's struck a chord with me, is that your stream, or the people you follow across your social media platform, is the equivalent of the company you keep. So in real life, the company you keep, if you had 2 hours spare and you chose to do a social activity and go for a drink, I'll use the example of with some people, they're the company you keep. And if you sit on your sofa for 2 hours, scrolling, that's the company you keep. So you've got a choice to make. Do you want to educate, learn, grow, get better informed, or do you want to follow Kardashians, reality stars, Love Island stars, Z-list Big Brother stars, who are all creating that false reality, I guess, because I'm sure none of them want to be stood there brushing their teeth with charcoal toothpaste, but they do it because that's what you should do. And then you see all the young kids doing it and you're thinking, what are you doing? So I just think that argument of if you have your library and your stream, the equivalent of the company you keep, and question whether when you see a post, whether that's the type of company you want, that makes you question every single person and every single post, I think. And I would encourage you to delete and clear it out, or start fresh, different way of looking at it. Unfollow everyone and start again and build it up from scratch. Okay. So mental health. Anything else anybody else wants to add on this hot topic?
I think it's important to say that it is difficult to talk about, and there's no real right way to talk about it. Like, even us saying here, we've obviously spoken about opinion a lot, and I think all our opinions are correct, but it's so difficult to give everyone a comprehensive rundown of mental health. But I think it's just important that
empathy is probably the biggest point, isn't it? Empathy is probably the biggest point. So, like, walk a mile in somebody else's shoes, and how all the old sayings go. But I'm sure my opinion on today's podcast has come across a bit obtuse, but it's more the employer's angle is what I'm trying to create. For me as the employer, what it's been good doing is getting people speaking about it more openly across the team, which I think has been really encouraging. The fact that we're on here podcasting about it today, but also in the safe space sessions, I think they've been really useful. And I think all you can do as an employer is put the platform out there and create a culture where it's acceptable to speak about it, alongside infrastructure where the support's there if people need it or want to use it. And that would be my wrap-up summary of what you can do, because I think beyond that, you need to leave it to the experts and kind of know when to pass across when it gets too serious for you to be handling, or when you're out your depth. And there's nothing wrong with saying that as an employer either. Okay, thanks very much. Thanks, Sophie. Thanks, Sam. Thanks for being with us this week. Feel free to check out The Knowledge, b2bknowledge.com, our online ungated content hub to help our clients, prospects and contacts navigate the ever-evolving B2B marketing landscape. And on that note, we will see you next week. Thanks very much.
Bye.